You know,
there are other survivors. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Atheist Impact, a Xander's Meteor podcast. To those of you questioning where I'm coming from, jump over to YouTube, and I am at youtube.com/users/Xander's Meteor, XANDARSMETEOR. So that's Xander with an X, just so everybody knows. So a couple of things that I want to talk about in this podcast, and the first one is I want to talk just briefly on those of you that are on YouTube, and remember again to those of you listening out there, most of this does originate from YouTube because that's where I spend the majority of my time and that's where I came from. So I do still pay attention to what goes on YouTube, and most of the time I try and stay out of the drama. But since this is my hour to go ahead and just talk about whatever comes to mind, I'm going to go ahead and talk about what's going on over there just a little bit. Now I know that as I am recording this, people are currently uploading their videos that were talking about what they're now calling Dramagate. Dramagate is where some of the bigger channels, some of the smaller channels, basically anybody, everybody that was in on the joke, all accused Dark Matter 2525 of doing something horrible. And instead of realistically dealing with this offline, they all just started making videos accusing Dark Matter 2525 of doing horrible, horrible things, and I can't believe it. Oh God, it's horrid, it's horrid. And they're all now, like I said, putting up videos that they're all saying that it was created drama in an attempt to basically be a satire of the drama that is going on between some of the other YouTube atheists and other atheists just in the atheist community. Essentially, they're trying to show the absurdity of Thunderfoot and Matt Dillahunty's ongoing argument, which, as far as I know, they're actually done with. I think Matt finally said, if you want to talk, we'll talk, but we're going to talk offline. This isn't a show for everybody. Regardless, I don't of what side I stand on that whole argument, which, most of the time I see drama and I say, I turn around and walk away. I'll just close the video. I don't really care. And when the I hate you Dark Matter 2525, I can't believe you did that video started popping up, I'm not going to give myself so much credit as to say that immediately I knew it was bullshit, but pretty quickly I knew it was bullshit. And I knew that they were simply doing this kind of stunt. And a lot of other people were leaving comments knowing that this was just a stunt, not to garner views and not to get subs, as Texan Canadian? Yeah, Texan Canadian mentioned. The Texan Canadian, sorry. He mentions that, this isn't about getting subs because obviously what kind of people do you want subbing to your channel when all they're interested in listening to is the drama? It's sort of like this podcast. Why would I want you all to be subscribing to the podcast on iTunes and elsewhere if the only thing that you were looking forward to was crazy drama between YouTube atheists? And the answer to that is no. And especially I would hope that the scope of my podcast would actually go beyond just YouTube. And generally that's something that I'm working on making sure that I do, so that those of you that aren't involved in YouTube can actually listen to this and go, oh, I read about that on the news, as opposed to, oh, I don't even know who the hell you're talking about. But like I said, since I got my start here on YouTube, there's a lot of YouTube stuff that I will talk about. So the question is, was this something that was useful, and was this something that was necessary? In my opinion, no. I think that it was a useless waste of time for everyone involved. I think that an attempt to create fake drama in an attempt to make a point is ultimately creating real drama and making a point that some people aren't going to stick around and listen to. And the Texan Canadian mentioned that you wouldn't want people sub to your, he said that the people that were, I can't remember exactly how he put it, but basically the people that were most likely to unsubscribe were the people that they actually want to have to subscribe to your channel, because the people that stick around or subscribe for this purpose are the kind of people that just live off of the drama anyway. Now, this was an argument that I had on Reddit the other day, where there was a person that put up a confession bear. Anybody that's on Reddit knows exactly what I'm talking about, but basically it's a picture of a bear that looks like he's really sad and confessing something that maybe he shouldn't. And somebody put up a confession bear that said, when a person asks for a subscribe or a like in a YouTube video, or puts up an annotation that asks for them to subscribe or like on YouTube, then they automatically assume that the person is an asshole and that they're not going to sub. And my response to that, which actually got quite a few upvotes, again, for those of you on Reddit, you know what I'm talking about, but basically it was a popular comment, and my comment was, like, if you're going to have that reaction to anybody asking for you to sub or to like the video, then I'm going to assume that you're not going to like it and you're not going to subscribe anyway. So you're not really the person that I'm going for, and I'm okay with that. But also at the same time, the whole point of YouTube, the whole point of me making this podcast, the whole point of the Atheist Experience down in Austin, the whole point of the skeptic conventions, the whole point of all of this stuff is to gain more popularity to a degree, also to get more people to, come into your world. In my opinion, the way that I look at it is that my growing up series was my way of letting the world into my world and letting the world see what it's like to actually grow up in an extremely Christian household. And there are some people that had a more extreme Christian household than I did. But there are a lot of people that have absolutely no idea what it's like to be born into a fundamentalist Christian household, and how crazy it can be, and how weird it can be, and how hard it is to overcome some of the things that you go through, because they don't make sense to you as an adult, and they sure as shit never made sense to you when you were a child. So the whole point of my growing up extreme Christian series was to let people into my world, and A, to tell people my story, B, to connect with other people, C, so that other people could find my videos and find some sort of answer that they needed within my videos, and D, to be a little bit of a mini celebrity. There is that entire mindset. There has to be a little bit of ego involved in all of this, otherwise you're not going to do it. If I didn't have confidence that my story was something that people wanted to listen to, I wouldn't tell it. And it's played out time and time again when people post up a video that says, I just don't know what else to do, I have to get this out. People leave comments on videos, people write blog posts on the internet, all over the internet. People are pouring their hearts out in an attempt to find someone who's willing to listen to them and willing to help them through some of these problems, and willing to say, you know what, I know exactly what you're going through, and here's how I got through it. Or, I don't know what you're going through, I can't understand it, I can't comprehend it, but if you need somebody to talk to when you're feeling down, hit me up, send me an email, whatever. And that's kind of what I try to do with my channel. And for a while, I was glued to my channel. When I started my channel back in April of 13? So it was 2011 that I started my channel, in April 2011. And at the time, I didn't have a job that worked me any more than a couple of days a week. I was living in Ohio, living with my parents. It's a long story, but the short version is that I was having some emotionally unstable times, and I really felt like if I didn't move away from Seattle, where I was living early 2010, if I didn't move away from Seattle, then either A, I would eventually end up hating Seattle, or B, I would end up in the loony bin because I wasn't seeking the help properly, and so I just needed that big giant change. And along with that change, I also needed some family support, and my family split between Oklahoma and Ohio, and so I moved back to Ohio to be closer to my parents. They also had a summer house. That's not really what it is, basically a mother-in-law unit on their land, and I lived there. So living there and having nothing else really to do, it was the middle of the country, didn't have a whole lot of friends, didn't have a whole lot of social life, actually didn't have any social life, and was only working 2 or 3 days a week. So I had all of the rest of the time to be on the internet. And that's pretty much what I did. And I honestly believe that had I not moved back to Ohio, I wouldn't have ever ended up where I am. And my deconversion story is a different story that I'll tell a different time. But had I never moved back to Ohio, I wouldn't have spent that much time on the internet. I wouldn't have eventually been sitting around asking questions that had no answers, and started using the internet, found YouTube, and then started making my videos on YouTube. Because if you actually look at the history of my channel, you'll see that from April of 2010 April 2011 until, pretty much November of of 2011. So April to November of 2011, I was really, really, really hammering out those videos. And I was doing them on a semi-regular basis. It was almost one per week. And they were full, what I'll call production-style videos, where it's a script that I write that I then edit. I then record the script. I set background music to it. I then save the audio recording, move it into the program that I use. Anybody that cares is Pro Show Producer. I move the audio over into Pro Show Producer. And from there, I go to the internet and I find images that match what I'm saying, and I have to deal with the transitions and the transition times and the effects and make sure that everything lines up. Essentially, I picked up that style from most of YouTube, but The Living Dinosaur is probably my favorite example of anybody that uses that style. Records it and then sets all of the slides and all of the images that you see on the screen to what you're hearing him say out loud. And that was the style that I adopted, and I can't say that I've come into my own style yet, because it's still kind of amateur hour to a degree, but someday I'll be doing these more often and be doing the production style. Anyway, I was making enough production style videos that I had a good following. I had a lot of people that were subscribing, and everybody that subscribed to me, everybody that started following me on Twitter, everybody that I was subscribing to, talking to in the comments, I was getting emails and PMs and everything else. It was great. It was awesome, because for somebody that didn't have any friends, and especially somebody that was a brand new atheist that had no friends whatsoever that were atheists, it was really important that I had that support structure and that I had those people pop up in my life and be a part of my life. So when I see other people that take advantage of their audience, and I'm not blaming anybody, if any of you are listening to me and you're involved in the drama gate, this isn't anything personal. I understand completely what you were trying to do. I just don't think that it was very effective, and I don't think that and maybe it was. Maybe it was completely and totally effective to you guys. And I'm sure that a great way to know if everyone was willing to accept the insane drama is to see how many subscribers, Dark Matter 2525 lost over the course of the past 3 or 4 days. But it just doesn't seem like it was a great use of the audience, or a great use of your time in front of the audience that you have. I have another video that I've been working on because I was tagged in another video, and it's a really, really good message. And it essentially comes down to actually doing something, not being lackadaisical, and not assuming that being an atheist is enough. Like, if you want to change the world, you have to change the world. You have to actually change at least your world a little bit, and not just the inside of your head, not just your thoughts. I think about it a lot of times. And again, the video will clarify it, but since not everybody watches this, and not everybody will watch or listens to this, not everybody will watch the video, the main points that I tried to get through were that we have a responsibility as human beings in order to take care of each other. And when we come out to everyone and we say, I'm an atheist, well, other than the simple fact that saying that you're an atheist means only that you do not believe in a god or gods, it doesn't really say anything else. And that's really, I don't know how to really grab this, but saying that you're an atheist doesn't change anything. Telling your believer friends that you're an atheist and then living your life proving that their beliefs are wrong and proving that their opinions on atheists are wrong, if they have any opinions, good or bad. Well, if they have good opinions of atheists, probably shouldn't attempt to change their minds on that. But the whole point is that I'm an atheist. And what does that mean? That means that I don't believe in God. And I don't believe in any gods. And personally, I don't believe in anything even supernatural. I am also an anti-theist. I actually believe there are no gods. But I do understand, and I've said this before, I understand that that is a positive claim. But I don't believe in God or gods in the same way that I don't believe in leprechauns and unicorns. There is the possibility that something that we currently define as God, unicorns, and leprechauns exists somewhere in the universe. But as it currently stands, we don't know. And it's not an I don't know and therefore I'm an agnostic. It's more along the lines of it's just a crazy concept that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me anymore. And yes, there was a time that I did believe, but I no longer believe. And I now put God on the shelf with fairies, leprechauns, unicorns, all of the old mythological creatures from Greek and Roman mythology. And I pretty much just assumed that Yahweh was just another mythical god that happened to have longer legs than the other mythical gods that we heard about. So really, anyway, the point is, when I say that, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that I'm a good person. It doesn't mean that I am going to work towards the common good of other people. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be helpful. It doesn't even mean I'm going to be nice. It doesn't mean that I voted for Obama. It doesn't mean that I voted for George Bush. It doesn't mean anything other than I don't believe in God. And I think that a great example of that is looking at the gun control debate that's going on right now. Sam Harris is popping up and basically in favor of yes, some measures, but not taking away the guns. And then there's, I don't know, I didn't read it all, PZ Myers, who jumped up and said, okay, Sam Harris, dude, what are you talking about? Actually, it was, what's his name? Jeff D. I actually saw him post something up on Facebook, Jeff D. from Atheist Experience. He posted up something saying, when you said this, I was like, okay, yeah, whatever, because you're Sam Harris, I'll let this one slide. He said, but I'm really getting tired of, or maybe it was Jeff D. quoting PZ Myers, I don't know, but basically I'm getting really tired of having to defend you, Sam. And that's one of the things. It's like I take my views and I say I'm an atheist and I'm a liberal. And I'm for some sort of limited gun control, and for abortion rights, and for equal rights for all people, and for, I don't know, whatever, pick something, legalize marijuana, and for socialism, something, whatever, social medicine, there we go, the medical plan. Now, most of you, well, I'll say most, I don't know, maybe you guys can just let me know in one way or another, email or comment, go over at YouTube. But most of you that heard that probably said, well, I don't agree with you on that. That's not what I say when I say I'm an atheist. And that's my point. When you say that you're an atheist, you're not saying that you're anything other than a person that doesn't believe in a god or gods. That's all. So for you to, or me, or them, or anyone, to extend that beyond I don't believe in a god or gods is, in my opinion, complete and total folly. Because then you are creating like Episcopalian and Methodist and Reformed whatever. It's like the flying spaghetti monster and, oh crap, what the hell's the name of it? Pastafarianism. There's Pastafarianism, and since it's all a joke and funny, then they also have the Reformed Church of Pastafarians or something like that. But the point of it all is that when you attach other words to, or other meanings to a word, then you lose the power that the word once had. And this was my whole point last podcast where I talk about communication. If I say atheist and you go, oh, if you're an atheist, that means that you're also a communist, and it also means that you are for socialism and for the government taking away our guns and for big government, and you voted twice for Obama and you're whatever. I mean, it's when I say atheist, I want people to simply go, oh, you don't believe in God, and that's it. And that's why, and I'm going to say it, I think that atheism plus is a big giant load of shit. And the reason is because atheism is atheism, and it has a definition. And when you want to tack on anything else, and this is nothing against what they're attempting to tack on, I have no problems with equal human rights, and I have no problems with everything else really that they're standing up for. I have a problem with them tacking it onto atheism because I'm an atheist. And when people who are introduced to atheism are introduced to atheism plus instead of atheism, and they go, whoa, so atheists are people that don't believe in God and believe blank, and they assume that because I'm an atheist, I also follow everything that is going on with the atheism plus crowd, then they're wrong. And that's why I don't like, to a degree, adding on anything to... Actually, I don't like across the board. I am an atheist. That's it. Says nothing else about me. And I could be a good atheist. I could be a bad atheist. But that's not a good atheist or a bad atheist. That's a good person or a bad person. My atheism has nothing to do with whether I'm good or bad. And I generally tend to think that I'm a good person. I look out for other people, I care about other people, and I empathize with other people. Do I do things that are not so good? Yeah. And generally, I do try to make amends for the things that I do that are wrong. I don't always, but I don't really think that that's necessarily it's not a downfall of humanity, which is what believers would like to say. It's simply a state of being. We are not perfect, and it doesn't mean that there is a perfect ideal out there that we're trying to live up to, which is what Christianity teaches, which is Jesus was this perfect ideal. This is what we are attempting to become and attempting to be. We want to live our lives as close to as perfect as Jesus was as possible. And we keep failing, and that's why we're imperfect, and God has written it in our hearts that we're imperfect fallen beings, and that's why we just can't do it. I think that's just a load of bullshit, obviously, but it also just demeans us. I'm not perfect. Fine, neither are you. No one is. No one ever has been perfect, because the ideal perfect that we have up there is unattainable, because we still... And I think even in the future, I think that let's just assume, let's play Fantasyland here for a little bit, do a little sci-fi. Let's say that through evolution, we eventually get to the point, like in one of Isaac Asimov's stories, and I can't remember which one it is, but it's about the multivac. And in one of those stories, humankind gets from where they are now, like where we are, where we think independently, like we have bodies, basically. And so eventually the mind is able to be removed from the body. And eventually the consciousness just simply floats around. It's kind of like everybody's in their own little bubble. Those of you that have seen Fantastic Planet, it's kind of like that, astral projection to a degree. And it's also very new agey, but nonetheless. And eventually as the human evolution continues, the minds merge into one, and they encompass the entirety of the universe. So it's basically one giant mind that is all minds combined as one universal consciousness. And so let's say that we get to that point. Well, before we get to the point where all of the minds are completely and totally one, is there going to be a point in time ever where no one's mind, no one's thoughts are what people would consider, quote, wrong? I mean, I don't think so. I'm sure that there will still be mistakes. There will still be some latent human emotions that we may or may not ever be able to overcome. And if we do, it will probably be through genetic manipulation or medication. And if it's either of those, then we're no longer natural. We're all playing with artificial selection biases. And some would argue that that's what we're doing now. But nonetheless, I don't think that there will ever be a time, excuse me, I don't believe that there will ever be a time where we are perfect. And only because when you say, oh, if only we could do it this way, it would be perfect. Then you do it that way. And when you're at that point, then you can actually think of something that's more perfect than that. And you can say, well, it's not so perfect because it's not as efficient. It's kind of like typing. I find writing to be way too slow, and so I don't do it anymore, much to my chagrin, because I actually really enjoy writing. and writing with a pen, that is. And so I do most of mine on typing, but I many times find that even as I type, I can't keep up with my brain. And so I think, okay, well, how about I go and buy some of that voice recognition software, the good stuff, and, pay the big bucks and get the good stuff. And I never do, because I listen to myself talk and I see what I type, and they're completely and totally different things. If I was attempting to write an hour-long script for this podcast, I would probably, well, first of all, I couldn't just type for an hour because I can't type as fast as I can talk. But essentially, I can think of a better way to do it. If I could talk the way that I type, talking would be much more efficient. And if I could talk with the same eloquence that I can type, then eventually I would say, if only I could connect it straight to my brain. And so then I would eventually, as technology continues in our future, I would connect it straight to my brain so that there would be output directly from my brain to the screen or to paper or to whatever. I'm guessing, I don't know, we're moving towards a paperless future. Hooray! But nonetheless, eventually I would say, okay, well now me thinking it and it showing up automatically is not fast enough. And so I would want to tap into my subconscious, and I would want my subconscious to be a part of it so that before I even knew what I was thinking, it would be on the paper and I would have it there, and I need to be able to turn off all external stimuli. So essentially I need a brain in a vat and the ability to turn off my eyes and my ears and my sensory organs so that I can just concentrate on this. And it continues to get more perfect. And then I say that the brain is too slow, and so then I need some sort of drug injection so that my synapses are firing faster, etc., etc. So there's always something better. There's always a more perfect ideal out there, and what you imagine is perfect today is not going to be perfect tomorrow. So what's the point, obviously, of all of this, and how is it in relation to everything that's going on YouTube? Again, when you have an audience available to you, then I believe that it's your responsibility to not only A, entertain them, because if you're not entertained, then what the hell's the point of listening? And also B, to be honest. And I think that the Dramagate issue was a dishonest attempt to make a point. It made the point, whatever the point was that they were attempting to make. They claim it was a success. But in my opinion, it was dishonest, because the people that were asking the questions were being told they were being lied to, essentially. All of the audiences were being lied to. And it was an attempt to generate drama around a fake drama in an attempt to prove a point. And to me, that is a misuse of your audience. And I don't think that that's something that I'd like to do. And so generally speaking, like I said at the very beginning, even though I've been talking about it for 20 minutes-ish, is I don't like to do that. I don't like to get involved in the drama that goes on YouTube. I don't like to get into arguments with people. And it's not because I don't think that I can hold my own, because I'm pretty sure that I probably could with the majority of people that got into an argument with me. And in fact, sometimes I do want to get into a fight. Sometimes I go searching through YouTube or somewhere trying to find someone that said something horribly stupid so that I can spend the next day or week or however long ripping them to shreds. But I never have, because I generally find something better to do with my time, or at least something else to do with my time. So anyway, forgive me if I do too much sniffing or throat clearing on this. I actually, after 16 years now, quit smoking last week. I have cheated a couple of times, bummed a couple of smokes off of friends at work, but I've gone from a pack a day to, well, I bummed 2 smokes out of the past week. So I've had 2 real cigarettes in the course of the past week. I'm using e-cigarettes. Anybody that's trying to quit, I can't necessarily guarantee you that this will work, but I use the green smoke cigarettes, e-cigarettes. I did the blue smoke e-cigarettes a while ago and didn't like them. They weren't very good quality, didn't get a very good puff off of them. And so you always kind of felt like, well, am I really smoking or not? And since it's half psychological, half physiological, at least in my opinion, then you kind of still need that thing in your hand, and it's like it's the oral fixation, and yes, giggle giggle haha, but you always want to have that cigarette. You want to have it in your hand because it's something for your hands to do. You want to put it in your mouth and you want to take a hit off of it and blow it out. That's what you want to do. And that's the great thing about the e-cigarettes, is that they can actually replace the cigarettes without having all of the tar and everything, but still give you some of the nicotine. Now, in my case, I'm not just doing the e-cigarettes, but I'm also doing Chantix. And some of you are going, oh my God, I've heard that's so horrible. Yes, you're right. It can be. I have read a lot of accounts about people that have talked about suicide and driving naked and not having any memory of it. The only thing, and this is the second time I've actually tried Chantix, although this time I actually gave a damn, and so it's working. This time, and last time, all I'm ending up with is really, really weird dreams. And it's not even so much weird dreams as just I can remember almost all of them. And I remember dreaming all night long. I can't remember them per se, but I remember dreaming all night long, whereas 3 weeks ago, before I started taking the Chantix, I maybe remembered a dream once every month, and now I wake up every morning either laughing, crying, or doing something going, what the hell was that in that dream? So, and halfway through the day I go, wait, oh my God, that was a dream, that was weird. So anyway, so I do the Chantix. I'm doing the e-cigarettes. I'm trying to get off the e-cigarettes just because I can see myself I just stay with it. I mean, if I keep on using the e-cigarettes, it reinforces the bad behavior of smoking. And so then when I'm around people that are smoking, like yesterday there was a party after work and I went out with everybody and somebody went out to smoke and I was like, yep, here I go. It's like I went outside and had a smoke with them and had the real cigarette with them. And that was one of the ones that I cheated. So having the cigarette, it reinforces, smoking is actually okay, not that big of a deal, so blah, blah. So anyway, if I'm clearing my throat a lot or if I sound different or whatever, then that's because I'm quitting smoking, so it's a bonus. Actually, I have quit smoking, like I said. A couple of cheats isn't too bad when you're usually doing a pack a day. So let's talk about different arguments. One of the things that I wanted to talk about for a while, because like I said in other podcasts, I listen to a lot of the Atheist Experience. A lot of time I'll wake up in the morning and I used to smoke and read the news and drink coffee. Now I just drink coffee, sit at my computer, and read through just random whatever. And then I usually head into the bathroom and turn on Atheist Experience while I'm taking my shower. And so I try and listen to like the 10 or 15 or 20 minute clips, just because that's about how long it's going to take me to take a shower and get out of the shower and get ready. And so because there are so many that are 5 minutes, I skip over those and I end up listening to the same 10 to 20 minute clips all the time. And one of the ones that I hear all the time is the Kalam Cosmological argument segment. And I always have found the Kalam Cosmological argument, from the first time that I heard it, which wasn't until I was an atheist, to just completely and totally fail. I mean, miserably. And this is where my science background fails a little bit on me, but also at the same time, it's the question that I have that stops you at step one. So the contemporary argument, as William Lane Craig will say, is whatever begins to exist has a cause. Now, in my opinion, and ignoring, obviously, whatever begins to exist has a cause. That's the whole point. That's what William Lane Craig says is the key point, is that the universe began to exist. That's step two. So therefore the universe has a cause. And that cause is God, blah, blah, blah. And of course, God never began to exist because God is eternal. Now, how you get to that is the big question. I mean, how can you say that God is eternal? Well, because he is. Well, how do you know that God's eternal? Well, because God would have to be eternal. Why would God have to be eternal? Because he created the universe. Why would God have to be eternal in order to create the universe? Well, because the universe had a beginning, and before the universe began, there was no time, and therefore God must be outside of time and space so that he can create the universe. So it's a circular argument, in my opinion, right off the bat, and I don't understand why anyone would ever even attempt to use it. And maybe I'm missing a key point in it, but whatever begins to exist has a cause. So saying that God is the infinite being that doesn't have a cause, to me, just fails because you've assumed something about something that there is no proof. And as for the universe beginning to exist, this is where my science question always pops up, and I've never gotten a straight answer. And so I would love it if one of you listeners out there would send me an email and or stop by my YouTube channel and answer this question for me. And that is, although I've heard that Stephen Hawking has said that asking the question what came before the Big Bang may not make any sense because the Big Bang was our universe coming into its own space and time, and it was the creation of space and time. In my mind, it was the creation of space and time as we know it. It wasn't necessarily the end or the beginning of our universe as it was. And so there's the whole argument where for the longest time they were trying to determine, is the universe expanding or is the universe contracting? If the universe is, even if the universe is expanding, how fast is it expanding? Because if it's not expanding fast enough, it could eventually crunch back, and that would be the big crunch. So you got the Big Bang, boom, everything goes out. Let's say, and let's just play some of these stupid creationist type things. If the gravitational force was, 0.5% stronger than it actually is, it's actually already extremely weak, but nonetheless, let's say that it was 0.5% stronger, then it would have actually caused the universe to collapse on itself at 8 billion years. So it would have expanded for 4 some and then shrunk for 4 some back down to the singularity that it was before. So then there's the big bounce. So universe comes into existence, however that may be. Let's go with string theory's M-brains for now and say that 2 brains collide and causes this explosion, which brings it into being. So then it expands and it crunches, and it expands and it crunches, and it expands and it crunches. So bang, crunch, bang, crunch. And so if it did crunch before, is there any way to find out? Because if there's no way to find out, then that's where I can understand Stephen Hawking's comment of saying that it's kind of a nonsensical question to ask, and it doesn't really mean anything because there is no before for the Big Bang. And I can get that because one of the thoughts that I had on Facebook was that if it did crunch and we were able, if intelligent life were to form before it crunched and they were technologically advanced enough, is there any way that they could actually send any kind of message through the next crunch and bang? And regardless of whether they actually could send a message through or not, I think that's the point, is that all of the matter and all of everything that is our universe was contained within that small singularity. And so because of that, it was all mushed together. So basically, there was no way for anything to say that, atom 4,979,421,975,202 needs to go flying off in that direction at a velocity of X. There is no way to actually do that before the Big Bang actually occurs. So I understand that. And so that's where I understand the point of maybe it's a nonsensical question. But what I don't understand, and again, this is the science side of it, is yes, it may be a nonsensical question, but to say that the universe began at the Big Bang, and I haven't finished Lawrence Krauss's Universe from Nothing yet, so I still have to go through some of that in order to understand some more of this. But if the singularity existed for, and again, you have to go with me on this, but if the universe existed in that form, in the singularity, for X amount of time, then before X amount of time, was it in the same form or was it in a different form? Is there actually any way to determine whether there was a crunch before or not? So the point of all of that is that when you look at the Kalam cosmological argument, is that which begins to exist has a cause. Well, when we say that the universe came into existence from the Big Bang, I don't think that actually is the fully accurate answer. And sure, there's always more research, and there are constantly people that are doing all sorts of things about it, and that's what Lawrence Krauss is doing, and that's why I should finish reading his book. But that's the thing, is the universe our universe as we know it began to exist at the Big Bang. But the elements that make up what went bang did exist prior to the Big Bang, just not in a way that we can say time existed. Now, I could be completely and totally wrong, and all of this may be pointless, but nonetheless, that's where my confusion is. That's where I think about it. When I hear the Kalam cosmological argument, I go, that which begins to exist has a cause. I'm going, wait a second. Yes, maybe. That's highly likely. But the universe began to exist, yes, but when? I mean, how far back do you want to go? And I'm sure that William Lane Craig, if we could prove that there was a big crunch before the Big Bang, and that this was just a series of crunch, bang, crunch, bang, crunch, bangs, that William Lane Craig would say, well, God is infinite, and therefore God has been there causing the big crunch and the Big Bang all this time, even though that's a perfectly naturalistic explanation. Also, does the universe... I mean, then you got all the other dimensions and everything else. But my point is that right at the bat, the Kalam cosmological argument falls apart. And that's, again, in my opinion, and I don't understand it. So, Craig talks about how it's logically impossible for a number of past events to be infinite, so the universe must have a definite beginning to its existence. And it's like, again, okay, but that's the problem, is that you can say that the Big Bang is when our universe moved into its current form, but you can't say with full assurity that the Big Bang is the beginning of everything. It's simply the beginning of what we currently have. And so it was moving from one form into another, possibly. Or, yeah, maybe it did come boom, and that was it. And there were no crunches ahead of time. Whatever it was that caused that to happen. So, you keep on going, obviously, with the Kalam cosmological argument. And so, again, I'll restate. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. And then... everybody says, and that cause is God, and the Bible proves that it's the God of the Bible, and it on and round and round. Again, this is where I say I could argue with myself and win 100% of the time. If I argued with another person, it would take a little bit more. But that's what happens when you have 2 weeks in between podcasts, and because of life and everything that happens in between, you kind of run out of time to really plan a plan of attack. I've mentioned a couple of different times about actually in the comments, about talking to someone. And I know that Thinking Atheist does two things. One, he has a setup because he uses Blog Talk Radio, I think. Because Blog Talk Radio, he actually calls in his calls in his podcast. So when he's doing his podcast, he's live. I'm not live. So when he's doing the podcast, he's also doing it through a website that allows him to receive phone calls that are actually also recorded. So he calls in, he does the podcast, other people call in, they do the podcast. There's a chat room there for people to listen in. And then he also talks to people that have sent him emails or messages. And so that was something that I thought about doing, but there's not a whole lot that's going on here with just the podcast that isn't in relation to YouTube. Again, I'm trying to sort of separate the two so that everything that happens here isn't just me talking about what happened on YouTube, but also at the same time, I spend a lot of time on YouTube. Most of the arguments and the conversations that I have are on YouTube. And as of so far, no one listening to the podcast has reached out to me anywhere other than on YouTube. So I guess I'll continue to talk about stuff that's on YouTube. I will try very hard to get some other people. If you want me to read something, or if you have a comment or something along those lines and you want me to actually read it on the air, then just go ahead and leave me a comment or send me an email. And again, the email is xandersmeteor, XANDARSMETEOR @gmail.com. Go ahead and send away. I can delete as easily as I can check it. So if for some reason that email gets out and turns into spam, oh well. So be it. Oh yeah, and I completely and totally forgot about this. So there is a new Gallup religion poll out, and it has to do with what people say they are in regards to religion. As to what sorry, I'm trying to type at the same time. This never works very well. But I really need to find this because I want to actually be staring at it when I tell you what it says. So one of the things that did recently come out when it came to the newest Gallup poll is the fact that the nuns, which is not N-U-N-S, not the ones that have the habits and live in the convents, But the nones, as in I don't know or I refuse to answer what my religious preference is still on the rise. And I am always wishy-washy when it comes to polls and period. I understand that polling is a science to a degree, and I know that when you scroll down to the bottom, Gallup is actually very honest about their numbers, and they say this is how many people we asked, and we asked in all of these regions, et cetera, et cetera. We did give a widespread, basically they do polls as best as polls can be done. And so last year, the number of people that said, I don't know, and again, this is the nones, I have no religion, or I don't know what religion I have, or I refuse to answer your question, has gone from 17.5%, which was last year, to 17.8%, which is only an increase of 0.3%. And that's not very much when compared to the previous years. 2008 was 14.6. It then went up 0.7 to 15.3. It then went up 1.1 to 16.4. It then went up 1.1 again in 2011 from 2010 to 2011. Did I say 10,011? Jeez. So from 2010 to 2011, it went up another 1.1%. And then just this past year, from the results of this poll, it has only gone up 0.3%, which the way that they're putting this is, and the Gallup poll headline for this is, in the U.S., rise in religious nones slows in 2012. The 17.8 who reported no religious identity in 2012 is on par with 2011. So they're essentially saying that we asked these people last year and we asked these people the year before, and it's pretty much about the same. And the way that their polls work is at the very bottom of the polls, they talk about, for results based on a total sampling of national adults for each year, one can say with 95% confidence that the maximum margin of sampling error is plus or minus 1 percentage point. So it's a possibility, because of that plus or minus 1 percentage point, that last year could have been a little bit lower and this year could actually be a little bit higher. I've noticed that there are some people that have brought up this point, and while I agree to a degree that I don't necessarily think that it's that much of a concern. I don't think that the atheist community needs to go, oh shit, we're not growing as fast as we thought that we were, and we're not going to continue to grow at this rate, and maybe eventually religion will take a hold again, and those numbers will start to shrink. I don't actually believe that. And again, that's why I think focusing on things like polls and saying, well, I don't know about that, maybe, and it means nothing. I mean, am I going to change my mind because a poll says that fewer people made the change from a religious stance to, or a religious preference to no religious preference over the course of the past year? No. I mean, I still don't believe in God, period. It doesn't matter what the poll says, and if the poll was the exact opposite, and if I was an atheist 10 years ago when nobody was willing to say it out loud, well, whatever. Not very many people. And it doesn't go back any further than 2008, so I'm wondering if there is more to that or not. But nonetheless, it got me thinking about, what is the impact there? And this is what I was talking about earlier in regards to what goes on YouTube and what goes on anywhere else. And when I got tagged in the video on YouTube, and that the whole concept was to do something. And I really can't stress this enough. And this is something that I am also guilty of, and it's something that I wish that I had more motivation to do, and I can come up with a million excuses. I mean, I've got my 40-hour-a-week job. I've got a semi-girlfriend that I tend to spend time with when I'm not at work, and I don't get off work until late, and then by the time it's late, etc., etc. There are 100 different reasons why I don't get involved in my community, and they're all horrible. None of them are actually worth... they're not good enough excuses if I actually want to see a change. And so looking around at everyone, and I see like the 17.5% last year to 17.8% this year, and I go, why? Why is it that way? And is it because people are looking at atheists and going, well, you're not doing anything? Then if that's the case, well, then that's something that we do need to do. And I've looked at the atheist communities here in Seattle, and I've gone to all of their websites. And there was one website that I saw that I was like, oh, I think it's the COR, the something of reason, Anyway, that site, and I went to the Seattle site, and I went and I looked, and it hadn't been updated for 3 years, something like that, 2 or 3 years. And I thought, well, I guess, well, maybe I'll go over to Seattle Atheists. So I go to seattleatheist.org, which is their website, and it's a placeholder for something else. So, I mean, I've said this in videos before, where Seattle is one of those godless areas, for lack of a better term. If you look at the Gallup polls for the areas that people are non-religious, Pacific Northwest is actually pretty high. The Pacific Northwest is one of those regions, kind of like the New England states. And if you hear me clicking, sorry. But Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, and Alaska are the least religious states, followed by Washington and Oregon, which is where I am. And I don't know about British Columbia up in Canada, but maybe they're the same. So I'm in one of the highest godless areas. And so one of the reasons I think that people just don't get together is because, well, what is there to get together about? We're not spending quite as much time fighting against the crazies in the Kansas City School Board who are trying to put, creationism into books, and Louisiana, who is trying to do the same, and Texas, that's trying to do abstinence-only sex education and that kind of stuff. I mean, we just don't deal with the same shit that the rest of the United States deals with, and we sure as hell don't deal with the same shit that the Bible Belt deals with. And so because of that, there doesn't really seem to be a giant need up here in Seattle for atheists to get together and give each other comfort and something to talk to, or someone to talk to and people to talk about. It just isn't necessary so much. But you have people like me who feel like I want to help change things in the areas other than where I am. I mean, I'm not going to move to Mississippi where 85% of the people say that religion is an important part of our daily lives. I'm not going to move there and try and change things. That, in my opinion, is it's kind of pointless. Also, I don't want to move to Mississippi. Maybe Florida, but doubtful. Nonetheless, how do I make a change from here? And that's where I look at it and I say, to borrow a phrase from the religion and, well, anywhere, is outreach. The things that we can do, the things that we can make a difference in, are the way that we do our outreach. Volunteering places and going and doing, food drives or clothing the homeless, picking up roadside trash, doing fundraising for local schools to get them books and everything that they need, those sorts of things. I guess you could say that with the recent legalization of gay marriage and marijuana in the state of Washington, that the atheist community would have probably been a great community to tap into for those. I don't know so much about the legalization of weed, but definitely the gay marriage side of things. If there was a strong atheist convention group up here that was actually active and making sure that those things didn't sneak in. I mean, we do have the Discovery Institute, as if they're still up and running. We have the Discovery Institute here in Seattle, so they're here, the believers and the crazies. But we pretty much we don't do anything because they're not doing anything here. So our schools generally, as far as I know, even though I did see a nice little graph about how well evolution is actually taught in our public schools, and most schools, there are some schools where evolution isn't taught at all. There are some schools where evolution is taught, but it's not really explained very well, and essentially, sorry, I just scared the crap out of myself, hit my coffee cup. There are some schools that just don't do a very good job of teaching evolution, and then there are schools that do a great job of teaching evolution. And Washington is one of those states that doesn't really do a great job of teaching evolution. And it's not, I don't believe that it's so much because of the religious pushback, although Washington is one of those states just like Ohio was, Ohio is a north-south state, north of Columbus and whatnot. I would almost consider, not all of it, but as the further north you go, the more New Englandy you get, the bluer that state gets. The further south you go, the redder that state gets. Cincinnati may be the final, I'll call it purple, final little purple spot on your way into the deep south. No, not the deep south. We'll call it the rest of the Midwest and into the Bible Belt and then down into the Deep South. So Washington is sort of the same. If you start from west and you have on this side of the Cascade Mountains, you have Seattle and Tacoma and Olympia and basically all the decision makers and where the majority of the population is. But then if you go over to the east of the Cascades, then you have pretty much all farmland and ranches and this and that and the other. And then you have, like, Spokane. I mean, I'm sure that there are some people in Washington that are going, there's more cities than just Spokane. And yes, I know there are more cities than just Spokane. But the point is that the majority of the population is on this side of the mountains. The majority of the population on this side of the mountains is more liberal. And so when things come up in the state legislature and when things come up on the state ballots, it's almost a guarantee that the blue side is going to win because the red side is severely, severely outnumbered in this state. So, yes, there is the possibility and there's the potential and there is the place for people to get together here in Seattle. And I'd kind of like to start something along those lines. And I should probably, like I've said before, I should probably get together and call up Bionic Dance and say, okay, let's go actually meet and see what we can come up with. But I'm weird like that. I don't go and hang out a whole lot with a whole lot of people ever, so I don't know. One of these days. So I have successfully made it through another podcast. I hope that my rambling wasn't too much for you guys to follow and that you actually enjoyed it. And as I have said before, eventually there'll be more of a format to this, but I'm not going to make any promises just because in 2 weeks, if I'm sitting here rambling into the microphone again, I don't want you guys to be disappointed. So hopefully you're listening because you actually enjoy this. And if you would, please give me some sort of feedback. You can either send me an email at xandersmeteor@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at xandersmeteor. And you can find me on Facebook. I think you can find me, just look up Xander's Meteor on Facebook and you'll find me there. And obviously also on YouTube. So I am all over the place. Remember, Xander is with an X, not a Z. So Xandars, Xanders. I hope you are all having a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you all very soon, I'm sure. And those of you that pay attention to my YouTube videos, look for the next couple of days. I will probably have another video up, the one that I spoke about earlier. And it should be a good one. All right, everyone, take care. This has been Atheist Impact, a Xander's Meteor Podcast, Episode 3. And let me tell you what day it is, just in case you got lost. Today is the 12th, but you're probably listening to this on the 13th. So, Happy New Year, and I will talk to you all soon. Take care.